Hey friends, welcome back to another episode of Space for Life. We're kind of in the Christmas season, and I think we have a great episode for everyone today. Sometimes I've been asked the question, how do I come up with different episode ideas? And so, interestingly, it's just kind of a new thing each time that comes to me. So sometimes it's an author that I happen to read the book and go, wow, I would love to be able to bring on that author. Recent episode with Jill Schulman came about that way. Sometimes it might be a topic that intrigues me. And then sometimes I'll just hear something that just captures my thoughts. And that's today's episode. So one of the things that I do in addition to podcasting is I teach a men's Bible study, and we have a great group, about 20 to 30 men that gather, and I team teach it now with my good friends J.G. Carter and Tuck Knupp. And so about a month or so ago, we were in a series on the fruit of the Spirit. And it was an off week for me, so I got to just attend the Bible study. And my friend Tuck Knupp was teaching the episode, and he taught it on the fruit of the Spirit, kindness. And the fruit of the Spirit is just, it has so much material to talk about. Love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, self-control. I think I got them all. But kindness is one of those that when it came for us to split up the different ones and who was going to take one, it was kind of like, I don't know that I necessarily want that particular one. So I listened to Tuck talk and teach and share about kindness. And immediately after the Bible study, I came up to him and I said, Tuck, we have got to do a podcast on it. And it was because he introduced such a breadth to the topic that I thought this reframes so much for me in a positive way, completely contrary to the ways I thought about kindness. So Tuck willingly agreed to be on the podcast again. If you have been listening for a while, Tuck was a guest, episode 140, where we talked about aging well. And that actually has been one of the most positive, well listened to episodes. So you may want to go back to that. But Tuck, I'm really glad you came back on with us for Space for Life to talk about this subject of kindness. And I'll introduce people again to you, but thanks for coming back.
Well, thank you for having me. It's a privilege.
Yeah, well, this is, I think this is going to be a great discussion. If anybody is listening to this and think, well, kindness, what's there to say about this? Stick with this, because I think you're going to find there's so much more to talk about in this subject than we might first give attention to. So quick introduction to Tuck, because we're not going to do the normal thing with Space for Life of going through your life story. But Tuck spent 18 years going back into the mid-60s with Young Life here in Richmond, which is where I got to know Tuck. He really built a name and quite a name for himself with Young Life here in Richmond. And then he was a pastor, moved to a pastor with Williamsburg Community Chapel in the days when Dick Woodward was the pastor there. And we may hear more about Dick in this particular episode. Then moved to be a solo pastor at Swift Creek Presbyterian Church, and more story to it. But fast forward to now, he is at Hope Church as a ministry associate, touching all sorts of areas at Hope Church, which is where I attend all the time. So Tuck has been in all sorts of various pieces of ministry, from youth ministry to now a lot of pastoral ministry in these particular years. In that, tremendous amount of wisdom, and as you'll hear, a lot of depth. So Tuck, we're going to dive into this topic of kindness. And maybe you can just start by just telling us a little bit about how this subject hit you when you were, quote, assigned the subject of kindness and the fruit of the Spirit.
Yeah, I remember that day when we divvied up the 9 manifestations of the fruit of the Spirit. Each one of us was going to get 3.
Yes.
And I did feel like maybe I got the short straw when I got kindness. I wonder, what in the world am I going to do with this? A whole bunch of men. And the first thing that came to me was probably the poster child for kindness, of course, was Mr. Rogers. You know, everybody thinks about growing up and how kind Mr. Rogers is.
Right.
But boy, for a bunch of guys, you know, you just don't want to be Mr. Rogers. Now, no aspersion on Fred Rogers, because I think he is a wonderful man, really, and had a lot to teach all of us. But I think there is a tension for most guys between the masculine and the feminine, and we wrestle with that a little bit. So, but there it is. The fruit of the Spirit is the personality of Jesus. And we know Jesus was masculine. And so you begin to do a deep dive into that. And what do you discover? What does that look like then for a man to be appropriately kind? It was a real challenge, but even for me in preparation, a revelation. And I thoroughly enjoyed digging into it and then being able to communicate some ideas to guys. And as always happens on our Friday mornings with our men's group, you get feedback and other guys have something to contribute, and a wonderful picture of kindness emerged.
Yeah, it was almost startling in a sense, because I think that, as you said, as men, we perhaps have a little bit of a wall up towards this idea of kindness because it feels weak and it does feel very feminine. And while we recognize that maybe we could use a little bit of that, we kind of only want a little bit of that because we don't want to be viewed as weak and overly feminine. And
don't want to be wishy-washy.
Right.
And or naive. You know, that's a part of it too. If you're overly kind, you might be taken advantage of. You might be seen to be a pushover or to be naive, and those are not positive things in most men's mind.
Yeah. And so I think one of the beauty of what you did is you recast this concept of kindness that I think so many people, including myself, kind of had all sorts of misconceptions about, and you recast it in a way that caused me to think, wow, I need a lot more of this. I need this more to pervade my character. And I can do that in such a way that doesn't make me weaker in the process. And so I love that. So perhaps we could begin with what, as you kind of dove deeper into it, how would you define kindness? And on the other side, what is not kindness? What are the things that we think of as kindness that you've come to believe are perhaps a misconception, a misconstruing of it?
Yeah, let's disassociate ourselves from the idea that kindness is just niceness. And I think that's always the first word that comes to mind for most people, is just be nice. No, that is not kindness. Kindness cannot exist other than as strength, and it cannot exist beyond the parameters of God's law. So we know Jesus came in grace and truth. Both of those have to be wed together to get an appropriate strength or strong kind of kindness to ourselves. So that's a good place to start, I think. I did bring up in the men's study a very interesting verse. Romans 11:22 talks about the kindness and severity of God. And another translation says the kindness and sternness of God. And most of us don't put those two words together when we're thinking about kindness. I think of sternness as maybe disapproval. But in this context, I think it probably means strength or unswerving solidity, incapable of being moved rather than disapproval. So
Yeah.
kindness and disapproval and strength go together, I believe.
Right. And I think that the tendency is for us to put those in separate buckets and think, okay, there are moments that I'm kind, nice, gentle, and then there are moments where I need to turn that off, and now I need to become strong and stern.
Yeah.
And I think the whole concept, really, as it's laid out as a fruit of the Spirit, and then even as it talks about Jesus, full of grace and truth, is that those things coexist together in all of the actions of who God is, who Jesus was. So Jesus didn't just have, some moments that he was kind and then some moments that he was tough and strong. They existed at the same time. And as you said, kindness cannot exist without strength, I think is the way you said it. And that is a completely different way of thinking about kindness.
Right. And kindness is more than just you do you, tolerance.
Right.
And it's more than just avoiding conflict, because it is strength. And you asked about a positive definition, new definition, kindness. The one that is helpful to me, or has been most helpful to me, is to think of it as a certain generosity of spirit. A generosity of spirit that wants to believe the best about other people, but with eyes wide open.
But with eyes wide open.
Yes.
Right.
It's not that we don't see clearly the circumstances around us or the people we're dealing with, but with kindness, we desire the best for them. We hope for the best in them. And it's a certain gracefulness and a generosity of spirit that believes the best about people as far as we can.
It's a great phrase, a generosity of spirit. And so I can think of instances. For instance, I think of in the Gospel of John when the Pharisees, attempting to trap Jesus, brought the woman caught in adultery to him. And they wanted her, well, I don't know whether they wanted her to be stoned, but they wanted to trap Jesus. And he said, he who is without sin casts the first stone. Well, of course, everybody walks away, starting with the oldest. But then with the woman, he says, where are your accusers? And they've all gone away. And he says, I forgive you. Go and sin no more. What a great expression of the kindness of God coexisting with the strength and the sternness, in a sense. It was, I am forgiving you, this phenomenal generosity of spirit with the uncompromising, at the same time, go and sin no more. That's where the real gift is, that he didn't just let her off the hook, that he spoke to her that way. So maybe that's just kind of an example of this coexisting of things.
Yeah.
So I love that generosity of spirit.
And I think one of the ways it shows up is, do we really believe in other people? And do we believe in other people to the extent that we will protect their reputation? I think that's one of the key markers of kindness. When people are not in the room, are they still safe? Because they know they're not going to be talked about. They know that we're going to only talk about them in the best light and in the best way. And we protect one another's reputation in that sense. And I want people to, I think maybe this is the great marker of whether or not you're a kind. Do people feel safe in your presence?
That's great.
That's a good question to ask yourself. Am I the kind of person that takes an easy joke at somebody else's expense just because I have a quick wit and the opportunity presented itself? Or was I sensitive enough to be careful with their feelings in the midst of all the banter, so that most of the banter is positive, building people up rather than tearing people down. Do we talk about people behind their backs, or do we protect one another's reputation, believe the best about one another, even when they're not around?
Yeah, and that's such a subtle thing because, there's talking about people behind their backs, which, as you and I both know, we often couch in very Christian terms like, well, I'm just concerned about this person who is doing XXX, or I'm praying for this person who's going through this. And it's our way of kind of just letting the cat out of the bag, so to speak. But I find, surprisingly, that those who talk behind people's back, they develop, in a sense, a reputation for that, even though they think what they're doing is behind their back. People know I'm not safe, as you say. And that expression of kindness is one of the really quiet ways that we express kindness. It's not just being nice in our language to one another. It's something that is strong. It is present both when we're with people and when we're not with people. Yeah. I also think it's a great presentation because I think this is very, very relevant for our families and our closest friends. Is our spouse safe when they're not around?
Yeah.
How do we speak about our children, about the rest of our family? And it doesn't mean that there isn't some room for honesty, but there's an honesty that can be done with, as you say, a generosity of spirit that is very, very evident in terms of how you talk about
it. It does require some discernment on our part, I think, and
Yeah.
how much to share and in what light to share it without throwing people under the bus or necessarily causing problems for them elsewhere. But so important in marriage, as you say. Things that can easily destroy marriage are a spirit of contempt or dismissiveness, which we can fall into from time to time. But kindness really oils the gears of a healthy marriage.
Yeah. Both in their presence and away from their presence, which is a different way of thinking about it.
Yeah.
That's real helpful. We're going to come back to a sense of how do we grow in kindness, because I think that's also one of the things that, as you taught about it on that Friday morning, was kind of a new direction for me to think about, was that kindness, while it is a quality of character in us or an absence of quality of character, it is a place we can grow into through several actions. So we're going to talk about that a bit. I think another part of the whole study for us on the fruit of the Spirit that was helpful for me as I thought about that more deeply than I ever had was realizing that these aspects, attributes of the fruit of the Spirit, love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, self-control, are descriptive of the nature of God. They are first descriptive of the nature of God. And that, again, causes me a pause to think that, first and foremost, at a depth and essence, the character of God toward me is kindness. Did that strike you particularly as you kind of went into this?
Well, it did. I thought we were going one direction here for the moment, but as soon as you said that, it takes me in a different direction, which is this, that if you want to grow in kindness, I think you have to grow in humility, because the kindness of God towards us is meant to develop compassion for other people. But it takes humility until I understand how deeply, how greatly I need the kindness of God because I'm a mess. When I begin to really be honest with myself and looking at my stuff and processing my own stuff, I can't help but come to the conclusion that, boy, I need the kindness of God in my life. But it has to come from a place of humility, from really acknowledging that I don't have it all together. I mess up over and over again, and yet God has compassion and kindness towards me. And so what can I do but offer that same kind of kindness and compassion to others? I don't think we can determine in some kind of self-help way to develop kindness.
Wow.
I just don't think it grows that way. I don't, here's human nature. As soon as I come to the beginning of my own self-interest, my kindness goes out the window. My self-interest competes with kindness towards others. It's not until I understand the depth of my own need for forgiveness and kindness from God that I begin to have compassion for others.
Yeah, because kindness, in a sense, is so much more than words spoken or even actions. It's something that is a spirit that comes out of it. And so if it's a self-improvement goal, so to speak, such as, well, I'm going to say something kind to my spouse every day, that quickly kind of shows itself as a fake version of it. If it isn't genuine, which means it has to come from within, it has to be a reflection of who we are deep down, it doesn't work. So, it really isn't.
And that requires humility.
Yeah, it requires humility. So I think that's great.
Can I add one more thing here? When you talk about kindness and the personality of Jesus, the character of God, I think this is a beautiful thought. I think each one of us is meant to reflect kindness a little bit differently, but consistent with who we are as people. We're all different from each other. And I think you will reflect and show kindness in a uniquely Tommy way that I can't as Tuck. But I will reflect kindness in Tuck's way. And it'll be different than JG's way or Tommy's way or Joe's way. I think we all have, as we grow into authentic people who really are captured by the Spirit of God, and we become more and more ourselves, we don't even have to gin it up or think about it. And this is the difference between self-improvement and the movement of the Spirit in our lives. As we really become ourselves in a natural, organic sort of way, we don't have to practice kindness. We become kind.
Wow.
And in our men's group, this whole series that we did on the fruit of the Spirit, we came back over and over again to John 15. I'm the vine, you are the branches. He that abides in me, and I in him, the same bringeth forth much fruit. So that's how it's meant to grow organically, as we are connected to Jesus. And in the words of Dick Woodward, and we all love Dick's 4 spiritual secrets. If folks on your podcast have not heard that before, it's worth mentioning those now.
Yeah, please do. And we can put that in the show notes. Dick Woodward was a giant of the faith if someone is not familiar with him. Share those 4 spiritual secrets.
Dick was the pastor at the Williamsburg Community Chapel for years and years. And when he talked about John 15, which was one of his favorite passages, he created this little picture, and it said, I'm not, but he is, and I'm in him, and he is in me. I can't, but he can, and I'm in him, and he's in me. I don't want to, but he wants to, and I'm in him, and he's in me. And then Dick would say, and then the 4th spiritual secret is looking back, it's I didn't, but he did. because I was in him and he was in me. Those are Dick Woodward's 4 spiritual secrets.
Wow.
They've meant a lot to a lot of people over the years.
Yeah. They just get so much at the essence of what abiding is, and the essence of that, I guess, spirit of humility that if we have kind of transforms us. Yeah. That's really good. I love, gosh, so many things you said. I love even just thinking about, what is maybe the dialect of kindness that God has for me that might be different from the dialect from that you have. That gets my mind going in a lot of different directions. Another place that you really brought this home that I thought was so helpful is this idea of kindness to ourselves. And I thought that was so helpful because as people, and I'll segment it as men, I think we can be so hard on ourselves. We can be so hard on ourselves that we're not kind, to others and all of these different ways. And yet at the root is receiving the kindness of God first to ourselves at such a depth level that we can't help but give it to others.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's well said. I don't know that I could say it any better than that. Sometimes we're so hard on ourselves because we're still so performance driven.
Yeah.
That we are trying to earn respect, earn love, earn our place in the world. And when we fall short, we beat ourselves up. But we're not living in alignment with the gospel when we're thinking that way. We're still under the law. We're still performing. We're presenting a false self in a sense. We're building our identity out of all the wrong things. And so then we're not kind to ourselves because it's all on us and we messed up and we're mad at ourselves. And so there's a great freedom in just understanding, getting to that place in your life where you realize that I can't perform well enough and I'm just me and that's good enough and God loves me. And it doesn't mean that I don't continue to work hard and strive for excellence, but the ego somehow gets out of the way at this point when I don't have to try to fool somebody else about who I am. And I can just do my best out of freedom and be kind to myself when I mess up. It's part of being human. It's going to happen over and over and over again. And God is with me.
Yeah. It gets back to Dick Woodward's spiritual secrets. The first one, I can't, but he can. Mm-hmm. I think we can easily jump to the he can and not give appropriate substance to the I can't. And we maybe acknowledge it in a superficial way, but to truly recognize that I can't and that we don't need to put on a mask that suggests, well, I really can, and I'm just kind of pretending, being false humble when I say I can't. No, we really can't, and we're going to fail, and we're going to fall down in all sorts of ways. And that's where we count on the kindness of God.
Over and over again, it comes back to humility, doesn't it?
Yeah. Yeah.
In so many ways.
Everything does continue to come back, and, done a few episodes on humility, but that recasting of humility, like we're trying to recast kindness as one of the strongest character traits that we can have. One of the character traits that comes out of the greatest security that we can have, identity, that changes everything. If we understand in an appropriate way, we are small and God is big. God is really, really big. And we are small, and it's not just that I'm small, you're small too. We're all small. And so we can stop pretending on that.
Amen, brother.
Yeah. But that's still pretty good at pretending on those things. Well, yeah, I want to just really, before we jump forward, I want to encourage those who are listening to perhaps take a few minutes one morning, because we're in the Christmas season and there's something about the kindness of God that has, an extra power to it in the Christmas season, in the understanding of God becoming flesh in a small baby, that I think is relevant. And I think there's also something powerful in the idea of taking a few extra moments for silence in Christmas. And I think it's a great opportunity for all of us to stop and be quiet for a moment and meditate, if you want to use that word, on the kindness of God to us.
Let the love of God wash over you.
Yeah. We don't do that enough. And if ever there was a season for that, to let the love of God wash over us, to let God's forgiveness, his kindness wash over us. And that might be a practice of just allowing that to happen in a few minutes of silence that's very, very different for people. But I would encourage it, because nothing will change that generosity of spirit towards others more than that understanding of God's generosity towards you individually. So I think there's a great opportunity for that. So how do we grow in kindness? We've talked a little bit about it with this humility, but do you have a few other thoughts?
I think abiding in Christ, number one, the vine, the branches, the four spiritual secrets, however you want to describe that. I think it's having enough courage to process your own stuff and to see yourself honestly. Stop playing games with yourself and God, and understand that's where the upside down nature of the gospel takes over, that to be great, you must become small. To find your way up, you must first go down into the depths of the reality of our broken nature, until we have compassion for ourselves and therefore for other people. And that's what makes it organic, I think, and genuine, authentic. Otherwise, we're just playing around on the surface. I think this was really interesting. I did not bring this up on our Friday when we talked with the guys, but this is a story that has left its mark on me. There was a Presbyterian pastor down in Chattanooga, Tennessee, named Ben Hayden years ago. And a friend of mine, found himself seated next to Ben Hayden on a plane flight one time. My friend was a pastor, and he said, well, I'm going to learn what I can, because Ben Hayden was a pretty big name, pretty prominent name. And one of the questions he asked him is, what would you take into consideration, or what would you be on the lookout for somebody you were going to hire on your church staff? And Hayden really surprised him. He said, I would never hire somebody who had not been through a brokenness experience.
Oh, wow. Huh.
Yeah. So it's that brokenness. The way up is down. You have to go through that kind of end of your own self-sufficiency, end of the rope of your own pride and strength and self-sufficiency. And that gives birth to a genuine kindness, I think.
Yeah, I've had a conversation recently with someone around the kind of the topic of suffering. And I've been asked and heard it asked of people, how has suffering changed you? And in one sense, that idea that, well, I'm supposed to be able to give a nice little list of suffering has made me this and this and this. But I think that brokenness creates, in a sense, a compassion that, I don't have the answers. I'm not in control. Life is really, really hard. And therefore, the world and everybody I come into contact with so needs kindness. That is, I don't know, I guess it's maybe a way in which that brokenness kind of shapes us.
Can I take it to a little bit different place for a moment?
Yeah.
We've been talking about kindness mostly in the context of personal relationships, but does this work on a larger societal, political, cultural sense? What?
Yeah.
How far can we afford to take kindness in the rough and tumble world of politics and culture and all the things that divide us these days? And I think it's this is the conclusion I've come to without a whole lot of thought about this, but I'll suggest it anyway, that kindness is definitely needed. I mean, we're told not just to be kind to the little person who can't do anything for us, but to be kind to our enemies. And these days, people are quick to perceive other people as our enemies, and we're afraid we're going to lose this culture war if we aren't vigilant and aren't strong and aren't combative. So how does that fit with kindness? Well, I think kindness is needed more than ever. It certainly would intersect with civility. But I do think we need both grace and truth. We have to hold on to the truth. At the same time, we're being graceful, not demonizing our opponents, but willing to listen, willing to acknowledge maybe we're not always right. But here's the key, for me at least. I think we may lose some battles, but ultimately win the war. I wonder if we lose more by forfeiting kindness. We lose something that really should be essential to our culture as salt and light, trying to win this larger war.
So if you think about that, with kindness, we may lose the battle but win the war. Without kindness, we may win the battle and lose the war.
Mm-hmm.
And the losing the war is really what it's about. That's really helpful. And I agree with you. I think the breadth of kindness into the marketplace, into our political discourse, into our churches, and how we approach those who don't agree with us in the churches, people who are different from us. I think it's really where the rubber meets the road.
That's well said.
I think of a particular place that I encountered on many occasions prior to doing all of this stuff that I'm doing now in podcasting. I ran companies for 40 years. If you own and you run companies for any period of time, you're inevitably going to come into the situation where you have to fire someone. We like to say let them go, but you have to let them go. And it's one of the most difficult things that I ever did. But I knew that somehow, if ever there was a moment that I had to somehow meld kindness and truth, it was in letting someone go. Mm-hmm. I had to deal with the reality that they were no longer going to work for us, but yet I desired to do it in such a way that I would express kindness towards them, a generosity of spirit. And there were many times that I did that all of my great efforts towards kindness was not appreciated in the slightest, where the person walked out angry, feeling misjudged, feeling mistreated, and yet it was important, if not only for me, that I entered into that process with a spirit of kindness. And even I can say since then, I've had some of those people come back and say, I now understand. Maybe that's a little bit losing the battle and winning the war. But I think the same thing holds true. My gosh, I wish we could bring some kindness to our political discourse. What a shame. We lose out so much because we actually choose the opposite path of unkindness. So that's helpful. I'm really glad you took it that direction. One of the things that I think struck me from the Bible study is that kindness is not just a few words that we say in a conversation and then we move on to living our lives. It is a quality of spirit that we bring into every area of our lives. And that if we say we are kind, but we're not kind at work, we're not really kind. If we say we're kind and we're mean-spirited in our political discourse, are we really kind? If we say we're kind and we beat ourselves up, are we really kind? If we're kind to all of the people out there and not kind to the people closest to us in our homes, are we really kind? And that expansion of kindness, I will say, and you brought that right to the surface on that lesson. It kind of took my breath away. It's why I came right to you after that and said, we have got to podcast on this.
Well, thank you.
Thank you for sharing that. Any other kind of thoughts that we haven't covered?
Just one last thought, and it just occurred to me. There's such an urge in us, I think, as humans, to want to fix each other. We see things about each other that rub us the wrong way or that we think is out of alignment with truth or godly living or just civil interaction. And there's such a tendency to want to fix other people. And I think one aspect maybe of kindness is to trust God to do that work in other people's lives. And I did mention this on the Friday morning. I said, I saw a bumper sticker one time that I loved. It said, you love them, I'll sort them out, signed God. And I think that's the ultimate statement of trust, that we'll trust God to do his work in other people's lives. It's not up to me, out of my sense of superiority or of seeing things that they don't see. It's not up to me to fix them. I can afford to be kind. If they come and ask me, of course, I've got to find a way to be honest and kind.
Sure, truthful and kind. Right.
But for the most part, it's not up to me to fix you. That's God's work.
Yeah. That's a great kind of closing thought, because that trips us up so often that we feel like somehow we have just got to get out that little jab trying to fix that person. If we let that go, then,
it's the speck in our neighbor's eye and the plank in our own all over again.
Yeah. Well, it's great. We've touched on it. I think there is so much more. I think if people begin to open up the Bible and read, they will see so many different instances of the kindness of God. I think just right off the top of my head, I was just thinking of the Garden of Eden. After Adam and Eve sinned, what's the first thing God did? God made clothes for them to cover their nakedness. An act of kindness was God's first act after that. It just shows throughout. What I want to perhaps close this with is perhaps a specific word to men, and maybe women that are listening will just forgive me for kind of singling out men. But I would really like to challenge men to look at how can I grow in kindness? How can I bring kindness more into the essence of my character in my way? I think as you put forth with my particular dialect of who I am, that how can I bring kindness and truth together in who I am at home, in the workplace? And this is for men and women, to reflect more of God's kindness to us. Of course, as well, how can I be more kind to myself? So my hope, my prayer for this episode is that it's caused those who are listening, as it has with me, to think, to mull, to meditate on a different way of seeing God with me, a different way of seeing how I might be with others in all of the areas of my life. And what a great time for this, in this Christmas season and as we go into a new year. So, Tuck, thank you. Thank you for what you offered in that Bible study. That was so incredibly helpful to me, and I know and hope that it will be helpful to those who are listening.
Thank you for having me today.
Yeah. Thanks, everybody, for listening. Share this not as a way of fixing others, but just as a way of sharing the kindness of God to you. Share this episode with others, and we'll be back next week. Thanks, everyone.